From where you are standing right now, wealth may not look difficult. It may look impossible. You have counted the numbers. You have reviewed the options. You have looked at the salary, the bank account, the people in your life, the economy outside your window, and the slow disappearance of every door you thought might open. You have done the honest calculation that practical people do, and the calculation has returned the same answer every time. There is no visible way. And that conclusion, that final and reasonable conclusion, is the most dangerous spiritual error a human being can make. Wattles, one of the quiet giants of the New Thought tradition, spent his life decoding a law that most people never encounter in their most desperate hours. That law is this: the visible way is never the only way, because the source that creates wealth is not confined to the roads your mind can already name. If you cannot see the channel, that does not mean the channel does not exist. It means you have been looking for supply in the wrong territory. This video will take you into that territory. But first, you must understand exactly how deep the trap goes. The mind, when it is afraid, becomes a prosecutor. It gathers evidence. It looks at the paycheck and calls it reality. It looks at the bank account and calls it prophecy. It examines the last 3 years of your financial life, tallies every failed attempt, every stalled opportunity, every door that opened slightly and then shut completely, and it arrives at a verdict about your future before your future has had any chance to speak for itself. This is the invisible courtroom where most people sentence themselves to a life of limitation, and the tragedy is that the sentence feels responsible. It feels like clear thinking. It feels like maturity. You look at the number on your screen and feel the familiar tightening in the chest. You think about your age and wonder whether the window is already closed. You think about the contacts you do not have, the background you were not given, the education you could not afford, the timing you seem to have always missed. You think about the people around you who appear to be moving while you remain standing in the same geography of lack. And then you calculate again because perhaps you missed something. But the calculation returns the same result. You are not stupid. You are not careless. You are doing exactly what a mind trained by visible evidence does. You are looking for supply in the places you have already looked, and finding nothing there, you conclude that nothing exists. The cruelest part of this trap is how intelligent it feels. The person who says there is no way is not a coward. They are a person who has genuinely examined the visible world and reported what they found there. A job that does not pay enough, a business that is not growing fast enough, a savings account that cannot carry the weight of the future, a family background that offers no inheritance, a market that feels closed to people without the right connections or the right credentials. All of this is true at the level of the visible world, and all of it is completely and dangerously incomplete, because the visible world is not the only world, and the visible channel is not the only channel. Wattles was not a man who asked you to close your eyes and pretend the bills were not real. He was not a man who offered vague comfort or spiritual fantasy to suffering people. He was a man who had lived inside financial failure long enough to know that there must be another law operating beneath appearances, and he spent decades uncovering that law with the precision of someone who could not afford to be wrong. What he found was not a trick. It was not a formula for wishful thinking. It was a principle so old and so reliable that it had been operating in the lives of receiving people long before they gave it any name. Wattles did not ask you to deny reality. He asked you to stop worshipping the visible part of reality as though it were the whole of reality. He made a distinction that most financial conversations never reach, and that distinction is the one this entire video is built upon. The channel is not the source. The pipe is not the reservoir. The road you can see is not the only road that exists, because the source that created the visible world is still creating, still forming, still arranging, and it does not require your permission or your comprehension to do so. This teaching will show you how to stop demanding a visible road before the source has revealed it. It will show you how invisible supply works, how it gets blocked, how it flows, and what you must do and stop doing to become a clear receiver of it. This is not about passivity. This is not about waiting without moving. This is about understanding the difference between your job in this creative process and the source's job, and then having the spiritual precision to stay in your own lane while the source arranges what your mind could never have calculated. There is a confusion so deeply embedded in the modern mind that most people carry it their entire lives without ever naming it. They confuse the channel through which supply arrives with the source from which all supply originates. These are not the same thing. They are not even close to the same thing. And yet, the confusion between them is the single most common cause of financial fear, spiritual paralysis, and the quiet devastation of people who genuinely desire to live in abundance but cannot seem to find their way there. Your paycheck is a channel. It is not the source. The company that writes your name on that payment is one pipe through which the flow of supply has been traveling toward you. When that pipe narrows, when the hours are cut, when the position is eliminated, when the income ceiling arrives and refuses to move, the natural human response is panic. But that panic is built on a theological error. You are not panicking because the source has dried up. You are panicking because you have forgotten that there is a source behind the channel, and that source is not limited to the diameter of the one pipe you have been depending upon. A client is a channel. It is not the source. The person who pays you for your work or your service or your product is one expression of supply flowing toward you. But when that client disappears, when the contract ends, when the relationship changes, when the market shifts and that particular client is no longer available to you, the fear that arrives in that moment is telling you a lie. The lie is that the supply has ended. The supply has not ended. The channel has changed. Those are two completely different events, and they require two completely different responses. A business model is a channel. It is not the source. The structure through which you have been organizing your effort and your service and your output is one arrangement through which wealth has been moving toward you. When that arrangement stops working, when the platform changes, when the audience shrinks, when the industry disrupts itself, and the old model no longer functions the way it once did, the average mind concludes that wealth is departing. Wealth is not departing. One channel has shifted. The source remains exactly as it was. An employer is a channel. A savings account is a channel. An inheritance is a channel. A spouse's income is a channel. A government benefit is a channel. A particular economy in a particular season is a channel. None of these things are the source. Each of them is one temporary, changeable, human, finite expression of a supply that originates in something far older, far larger, and far more intelligent than any of them. When you mistake the channel for the source, every problem in that channel becomes a spiritual emergency. Every disruption of the visible becomes evidence of abandonment by the invisible. This is the trap. When the job slows down, you think the supply has slowed down. When the client disappears, you think wealth has disappeared. When no new door is visible, you think no door exists. You have attached your certainty about your financial future to the behavior of one or two visible channels. And since visible channels are finite, seasonal, impermanent, and responsive to 100 forces you cannot control, your financial certainty collapses every time one of them changes. You are living at the mercy of channels. You were meant to live in the trust of the source. This confusion is not a minor inconvenience. It is a foundational error that reshapes every decision you make about money. Because when you believe the channel is the source, you will do everything in your power to protect that one channel. You will tolerate conditions that diminish you because you fear losing the one visible pipe. You will refuse to move toward new doors because you cannot afford to lose the one door you can name. You will allow the channel to define your identity, your confidence, and your sense of spiritual favor, none of which it has any authority to determine. The correction is not complicated, but it requires repetition before it becomes instinct. When you look at any visible source of income, any person, any position, any structure, any platform that currently carries wealth toward you, you must learn to say internally with calm and precision, that is a channel. It is not the source. That simple, repeated correction begins to loosen the grip of the visible world on your faith. It does not ask you to become irresponsible. It asks you to become accurate. The source is behind every channel, and the source is not limited to the channels your mind can currently name. If what you are hearing right now is beginning to separate something in you, beginning to create a small but significant distance between the fear of a changing channel and the trust in a constant source, Then there is something I want you to do right now in the comments section below. Not for the algorithm, not for engagement, for yourself. Write these words as a declaration, as an act of identity, as a small but serious public commitment to a different way of seeing your financial life. Write, I trust the invisible channel. Those 4 words are not decoration. They are a statement of position. When you write them, you are not simply participating in a comment section. You are declaring in whatever small but real way declarations function that you are separating the source from the channel, that you understand the pipe is not the reservoir, that you are willing to receive supply through doors that are not yet visible to you. Write it now, say it as you write it, and then let us continue, because the cost of not making this separation is something we need to examine together. When a person trusts only visible channels for their financial life, the emotional consequences are not occasional. They are constant. They are chronic. They do not arrive and leave. They settle in like a permanent weather pattern that the body begins to accept as normal, even as it quietly destroys the capacity for faith, peace, and clear perception. The emotional cost of worshipping visible channels is so significant that it is worth spending time inside it, not to create suffering, but to make the cost visible enough that the alternative becomes genuinely compelling. The first and most immediate cost is the compulsive checking. The person who trusts only visible channels checks their bank account the way an anxious person checks the weather before leaving the house. Repeatedly, early in the morning, late at night, in the middle of a meal. Not because looking at the number changes anything, but because the mind has decided that if it watches closely enough, it can prevent the worst from happening. The number becomes a source of emotional instruction. If it goes up slightly, there is brief relief. If it holds still or decreases, there is quiet panic. The account owns the day. The account is consulted before the source is trusted. And the source, which does not speak through bank account balances alone, goes unheard. The second cost is the rehearsal of disaster. Before sleep, when the mind has no distraction to protect it from itself, the person who trusts only visible channels begins to run the numbers. They calculate how many months the current situation can hold. They imagine the worst outcome. They rehearse the conversation where they explain to someone close to them that things have become desperate. They imagine the thing they will have to sell, the arrangement they will have to make, the pride they will have to surrender. This is not planning. It is mental suffering sustained for hours against a future that has not arrived and may never arrive. The third cost is the inability to recognize small opportunity. When the mind is locked in fear about visible channels, it becomes incapable of perceiving humble beginnings as genuine supply. A small invitation is dismissed. A modest conversation is not pursued. An idea that would require some patience is rejected because the crisis feels too urgent for something that does not produce immediate and large result. The person is so focused on the size of the delivery they think they need that they cannot see the door that is quietly opening right in front of them. Fear does not only hurt, fear filters. The fourth cost is the toxic envy of other people's visible channels. When you believe supply can only come through visible channels, the person who has a better visible channel than yours becomes a source of pain. You watch their income, their position, their clients, their platform, their apparent ease, and you feel the mix of grief and frustration that comes from believing their success diminishes your possibility. But their channel is not taking anything from your supply. The source is not finite. There is no shortage at the level of the reservoir. The person who appears to prosper more than you is not consuming your portion. They are simply operating from a wider pipe. The fifth cost is the confusion of fear with wisdom. This is perhaps the most sophisticated cost, and it is worth pausing on. The person who refuses a new opportunity because they are afraid will not say, "I am afraid." They will say, "I am being responsible." They will say, "I am being realistic." They will construct a reasonable, intelligent-sounding argument for why the new door is not trustworthy, why the unfamiliar channel is not reliable, why the timing is not right, why their current visible channel, however unsatisfying, is safer than movement toward the unknown. They call this analysis, they call this prudence. Wattles called it fear wearing the costume of wisdom, and it is one of the most powerful invisible forces keeping receiving people from their supply. The sixth cost is the deep and quiet sense of spiritual abandonment. When the visible channels are thin and no new ones are appearing, the person who has mixed up channel and source eventually begins to feel that the source itself has withdrawn. They pray, and nothing seems to respond. They declare abundance, and the account does not move. They try to believe, and the belief feels hollow, because the visible evidence is speaking louder than the spiritual teaching. They begin to wonder whether the law works for other people, but not for them. Whether they are excluded in some way they cannot name. Whether source is real, and if it is real, whether it is interested in them personally. This is the emotional destination of visible channel worship. It leads eventually to a quiet and painful crisis of faith. The seventh cost runs deeper still. When you spend months or years trusting only visible channels, you begin to build your identity around what those channels reflect about you. If the income is small, you begin to feel small. If the opportunity is limited, you begin to feel limited. If the doors are closed, you begin to feel like the kind of person that doors close for. The visible channel is now telling you not only what you have, but who you are. This is a devastating confusion, because the channel was never meant to define identity. Identity is set at the level of source, and source sees someone completely different from what the current channel is reflecting. The eighth cost is a kind of paralysis that masquerades as logic. The person says, "When I see the path clearly, I will move. When the channel appears, I will trust. When the first sign arrives, I will believe." But the Wattles teaching reverses this sequence entirely. The sign appears after the trust. The channel opens after the movement. The path becomes clear after the decision to walk has been made. Waiting for visible certainty before committing to invisible trust is not caution. It is a permanent stall. It is the logical conclusion of a belief system that requires the visible world to move first, when in truth, the invisible law requires the inner state to move first. The ninth cost is the repeated attempt to force supply through exhausted routes. The person who cannot trust invisible channels will keep returning to the same familiar doors, knocking louder each time, hoping that intensity of effort will compensate for the absence of new thinking. They will apply for the same type of position again. They will pitch the same type of client again. They will try the same approach that produced disappointing results the last time, perhaps adjusted slightly, but essentially the same. This is not persistence. This is the visible channel mind desperately protecting itself from the only real solution, which is to release the known route and allow the source to arrange an unknown one. The 10th cost is the heaviest one. It is the theft of present peace. Every day spent calculating from visible evidence is a day lived in the mental compression of lack. It is a day where the source is not trusted, where invisible supply is not received, where the nervous system is held in a state of low-grade emergency, and where the inner state that would actually attract and recognize new channels is systematically destroyed by the anxiety that prevents it. You cannot receive from a clenched fist. You cannot recognize the new channel when your eyes are locked on the one that is closing. The emotional cost of trusting only visible supply is, in the end, the very supply you most urgently need. Wallace Wattles did not spend his life teaching people how to work harder. He was not interested in productivity formulas or effort multiplication or the clever optimization of visible channels. He was interested in something far more fundamental, far more ancient and far more powerful than any of those things. He was interested in the relationship between the human mind and the formless intelligence from which all visible reality, including all wealth and all supply, perpetually emerges. And once you understand what he was actually pointing toward, the financial conversation changes permanently. Wattles taught that beneath every visible thing, beneath every dollar, every channel, every resource, every opportunity, every client, every business, every income stream, there is a substance he called the formless substance. This is not a metaphor. It is a description of the originating creative intelligence from which all visible forms are continuously being produced. The visible world is not the foundation. The visible world is the surface expression of something far deeper and far more generative. The source is prior to every channel. Channels are the result of source moving into form. They are not the origin of anything. This distinction matters practically because it means that when a visible channel closes, the source from which that channel was an expression has not closed. The reservoir has not drained. The creative intelligence that first produced that channel, that particular pipe, that specific route, is still operating, still forming, still arranging, and perfectly capable of producing a new channel, or reviving the old one, or creating something so entirely different that your mind would not have thought to request it. The closing of a channel is not the closing of the source. It may actually be the opening of something better, something more direct, something your mind would never have chosen, but the source can clearly see. Wattles teaches what he called the certain way, and the certain way is not a system of forced acquisition. It is a system of creative relation. You relate to the source in a particular posture, with clarity of desire, with gratitude, with faith, with action, and through that relation, the source moves supply toward you through whatever channels it chooses. Your role is not to manufacture every route. Your role is to hold the image clearly, to trust the intelligence behind the form, and to move in the direction of whatever visible action the nearest open door invites. The rest is the source's work. What the master truly taught is that the visible world is not the cause of your circumstances. It is the result. The cause is always at the level of mind, faith, inner state, and creative relation with source. Most people spend their entire lives trying to rearrange the results while leaving the cause untouched. They move one visible piece, wait for a different result, become frustrated when the result does not change, and conclude that no change is possible. But Wattles is relentlessly clear. Change the inner condition, the mental image, the faith posture, the creative relation, and the visible world, including its channels of supply, will begin to rearrange itself accordingly. The source does not operate on the same schedule as your anxiety. It does not respond to urgency the way a human employer might respond to a deadline. It operates according to creative law, which moves in ways that do not always match the viewer's timetable. This can feel like silence. It can feel like delay. It can feel like abandonment to a mind that has been trained to interpret visible speed as evidence of spiritual favor. But Wattles makes clear that the silence before the supply is often the most active period, the period in which the source is arranging channels the mind has not yet seen. Channels can be old, newly revived, or entirely without precedent. The source can reactivate something you discarded years ago. It can arrange a connection through a person you dismissed. It can open a path through a sequence of events that your rational mind would never have designed, because your rational mind does not have access to the whole picture. The source does, and the source does not require your approval, your comprehension, or your advance endorsement of the route before it begins to arrange the delivery. What the master requires of you is not submission to poverty or passive endurance of lack. What the master requires is a specific mental and spiritual posture, the clear image held steadily, the trust maintained without collapsing into fear, the action taken through whatever visible door currently presents itself, and the refusal to limit the source by insisting that it use only the channels your mind has already named. This is the certain way. Not certain because the route is guaranteed to look familiar, but certain because the law governing it is unchanging and the source behind it is without limit. There is a belief operating inside you right now, very possibly, that has felt like clear thinking for so long that you have never examined it as a belief at all. The belief is this: if I cannot see how something will happen, then it probably cannot happen. And because you are a serious person, a realistic person, a person who has been disappointed before and does not want to be disappointed again, this belief has accumulated tremendous authority over your decisions. It feels like wisdom. It feels like hard-won experience. It is, in fact, a spiritual error that has been quietly closing invisible channels every time you allow it to run. Your inability to imagine a financial path is not evidence that no financial path exists. It is evidence that your mind, operating from memory and from the visible record of past experience, has reached the edge of what it can see from where it currently stands. The mind does not see new channels. The mind sees the channels it already knows. When you ask your mind how wealth will arrive, and the mind cannot produce an answer, the mind does not say, "I have reached my limit." The mind says, "There is no answer." It confuses its own boundary with the boundary of reality. And reality, at the level of invisible supply, has no such boundary. The mind is trained by memory. It catalogues the channels that have worked before, the job that paid, the client that hired, the investment that returned, the family member who helped, the lucky opportunity that arrived at the right moment. These are the channels the mind trusts because it has evidence of their existence. But Source creates channels that have no precedent in your personal history. It arranges supply through routes that have never appeared in your life before. It introduces people, ideas, timing, circumstances, and openings that your mind genuinely cannot find in memory because they have never existed there. And since the mind can only calculate from what it has stored, the mind will consistently conclude that these new channels are impossible because it has no memory of them. Faith begins precisely where visible calculation ends. This is not a poetic observation. It is a description of an actual interior threshold. You reach the edge of what you can see, what you can plan, what you can logically expect from the visible world you currently inhabit. And at that edge, two responses are available. The first is to conclude that the edge is the end, that no supply exists beyond what you can currently see. The second is to understand that the edge of your vision is not the edge of the source's capacity. That beyond the limit of your calculation, the source is already working. Faith is the choice to trust what the source is doing beyond the edge of your sight. Not knowing how something will happen is not a confession of weakness. It can become a sacred doorway, and the word sacred is used here with full intention. The moment when you do not know the how, when the visible route has disappeared, when the channel you are depending upon has closed, and you choose in that moment to hold your image clearly and trust the source rather than collapse into fear, that moment is a moment of genuine spiritual practice. It is the exact moment the masters were describing when they wrote about faith. Not the comfortable faith of a person whose visible channels are all healthy and flowing, but the tested faith of a person who cannot see the route and trusts the source anyway. Your mind sees the past. The source arranges the future. This contrast is essential. Every calculation you make about whether wealth can arrive in your life is built from historical data. It uses your previous income as a reference point. It uses your previous failures as evidence of pattern. It uses the channels that have already operated in your life as the only possible template for channels that might operate in the future. But the source is not constrained by your historical data. It does not use your past as a ceiling. It does not need the future to resemble the past. It can arrange circumstances, connections, ideas, and deliveries that have no parallel in your personal history and would never appear on any reasonable projection of your visible life. The hidden error in the belief that says there is no way is that it places human mental limitation in the position of final authority over universal creative capacity. Your mind says there is no way, and you obey that conclusion as though your mind and the source were the same thing. They are not the same thing. Your mind is one instrument. The source is the intelligence from which the mind and everything else emerged. When your mind cannot find a path, the honest conclusion is not that no path exists. The honest conclusion is that the source has not yet revealed the path to your mind. Those are two entirely different situations. The shift that Wattles is asking you to make is a shift in where you locate authority. The mind is not the final authority on what is possible. The source is. And since the source is not limited to your memory, your experience, your contact list, your education, your current income, your age, your background, or your geography, the field of what is possible for you extends infinitely beyond what your calculation can contain. When you allow the mind to be the final authority, you live inside the small room of visible evidence. When you allow the source to be the final authority, you live at the threshold of infinite supply, watching for the channel that your mind could not have predicted and your faith is now prepared to receive. There is something we will explore fully as this teaching continues, something that very few people who are genuinely trying to receive supply ever recognize in themselves. It is not obvious doubt. It is not the kind of fear that announces itself clearly and says, "I do not believe this will work." It is something far more subtle. It is a habit so practiced and so comfortable that it wears the face of good judgment. It is the visible way addiction, and it is the single most reliable way that people who sincerely want invisible supply end up blocking it at the very moment it is trying to reach them. This addiction does not feel like an addiction. It feels like responsibility. It feels like you are asking the right questions before committing to something uncertain. It feels like needing a plan, which reasonable people do. It feels like choosing familiar doors because you have some evidence that familiar doors sometimes open, while the unfamiliar door has no evidence behind it yet. It feels like the kind of caution that protects you from foolishness. And it is, in truth, the mechanism by which invisible supply gets refused before it is ever received. The visible way addiction shows up in a particular moment. It shows up when the channel that appears does not look like what you expected, when the delivery arrives in packaging you did not order, when the opportunity comes from a direction you had not considered, when the idea seems too ordinary to be divine, when the person who offers help is not the kind of person you imagined would help you. In that moment, the visible way mind says, "This cannot be it." And in saying that, it closes the very channel that Source was using to bring supply through. It shows up as the rejection of small beginnings. When the step that presents itself is humble, the addicted mind dismisses it. It is looking for a large and obvious door. It is looking for a channel it can recognize. It is looking for supply that comes wrapped in the kind of proof that feels satisfying to the rational mind. And when what appears is instead a small conversation, a modest opportunity, an unexpected invitation, an idea that does not yet have a clear business plan attached to it, the mind says, "Not yet, this is not serious enough, this does not look like the way," and supply retreats. It shows up as the insistence that the channel must be familiar. The person who has always received through employment is suspicious of an entrepreneurial opening. The person who has always received through one specific skill is reluctant to develop an adjacent one. The person who has always been in one industry is closed to a completely different channel that the Source has arranged. Familiarity feels like safety. Unfamiliarity feels like risk. But from the perspective of invisible supply, familiarity is simply the label your mind puts on the channels it has already recorded. The Source is not limited to your recorded channels. Watch for this in yourself as this teaching continues. Notice when a new channel presents itself and your first response is suspicion rather than curiosity. Notice when you say "not yet" and wonder whether you mean there is not enough evidence or whether you mean this does not look like what I ordered. Notice when you reject an opportunity and ask yourself honestly whether the rejection is wisdom or whether it is the visible way addiction refusing to receive from an unfamiliar direction. Later in this video, we will name exactly what that moment looks like and what to do inside it. But for now, know that it exists, know that it operates in most sincere seeking people, and know that simply becoming aware of it begins to loosen its authority. The invisible supply that Source has arranged for your life is not blocked because the Source is unwilling or unable to deliver. In most cases, when supply feels absent, the delivery has been attempted, and the door has been locked from the inside by the very person who most wants it to open. We will show you exactly how that locking mechanism works. But first, we need to go deeper into the invisible mechanism itself, so that you understand how supply actually moves before we examine how it gets stopped. There is one specific moment, a moment we will reveal in full before this teaching ends, when the invisible channel either opens or closes based on the interior decision of the receiver. That moment is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It happens quietly, in the ordinary fabric of a day, and most people pass through it without understanding that they have just made a defining choice about their financial life. We will reach that moment. Stay with this teaching. Everything we are building toward is moving toward that one precise and transformational revelation. To understand invisible supply, you need a model that your mind can hold without immediately dismissing it as vague or mystical. So consider the following. There is a reservoir. The reservoir is the source, the formless substance, the infinite creative intelligence from which all visible things are continuously being produced. The reservoir is not empty. The reservoir has never been empty. The reservoir does not have seasons of shortage at its own level. At the level of the source, there is no such thing as a limited supply. Supply is the nature of the source the way heat is the nature of fire. It is not something the source produces occasionally. It is what the source is. From this reservoir, channels extend outward into the visible world. These channels are the pipes. They are the visible forms through which wealth moves toward you. The employer, the client, the business, the investment, the unexpected gift, the new idea, the collaboration, the open door. Each of these is one channel, one pipe extending from the infinite reservoir toward your life. And here is the critical distinction that changes everything. A pipe can be dry without the reservoir being dry. A specific channel can be narrow or blocked or closed without the source being narrow or blocked or closed. These are two separate conditions, and they must never be confused. When a channel in your life closes, when the income stream slows, when the client disappears, when the opportunity falls through, the logical response is not to conclude that the reservoir has emptied. The logical response, the spiritually accurate response, is to recognize that one pipe has changed and to remain open to the source arranging a different pipe. The source is not limited to the pipe you have been using. It can send water through a new channel you have not seen before. It can revive an old channel you assumed was permanently dry. It can create an entirely new conduit that does not resemble any previous channel in your experience. Sometimes the first sign of invisible supply is not money. This is something most people miss because they are looking for the final product and ignoring the initial movement. Sometimes the first sign is an idea that arrives without obvious financial logic attached to it. The idea feels disconnected from income, and so it is dismissed. But the idea is the beginning of the new channel forming. It is the source beginning to arrange the pipe before the pipe is visible. If the idea is honored and followed, the channel develops. If the idea is dismissed because it does not immediately look like wealth, the channel dissolves before it could carry anything. Sometimes the first sign is a person, not a wealthy person, not a person with obvious resources to transfer. Sometimes it is simply a person who knows someone, or who carries a piece of information, or who represents a direction your life needs to move toward before the channel becomes visible. The source uses people as elements in the arrangement of invisible supply. When a person appears unexpectedly, or when a connection is offered that seems unrelated to your financial need, the visible way mind dismisses it. The trusting mind follows the thread and waits to see where it leads. Sometimes the first sign is a delay that redirects. You expected one thing, and it did not arrive. A door you were certain would open did not open. A plan you had built with genuine effort collapsed at the final moment. The visible way mind reads this as failure, as proof that the supply is not coming. The receiving mind reads it as redirection. The source sees something your mind cannot see. The closed door is protecting you from a channel that would have been smaller than what the source is now arranging. The delay is the preparation of something better, something more direct, something that could not have appeared while the other door was still open. Sometimes the first sign is something that looks like a humble task rather than a wealth channel. The invitation to help with something small. The suggestion to learn something new. The nudge toward a conversation that feels unnecessary. The visible way mind wants the first sign to be impressive. It wants the delivery to arrive in a vehicle worthy of the supply it has been waiting for. But the source does not organize delivery according to impressiveness. It organizes delivery according to the most direct and efficient route available from your current position. And that route is often simpler and more ordinary than the anxious mind expects. The relationship between faith and the forming of a new channel is not abstract. Faith holds the receiver in a posture of openness and expectation while the invisible process is taking place. A person in faith is available. Their attention is not collapsed inward onto fear. Their perception is not narrowed by anxiety to the point where they can only see the absence of what they want. A person in faith is looking outward with a kind of relaxed alertness. The way a person who has ordered something important and trusts the delivery system looks out occasionally, not with panic, but with the calm expectation that something is coming. The moment faith collapses and fear takes over, the receiver closes. They stop being available. Their attention turns inward onto the crisis. Their perception narrows. The small invitation that could have been the first channel does not register. The person who could have been the connector is not noticed. The idea that could have been the beginning of a new pipe is dismissed as irrelevant distraction. The channel was forming, but the receiver was no longer in the posture required to recognize it. This is how invisible supply can be active, and yet feel completely absent to the person who most needs it. Action is not separate from the mechanism of invisible supply. It is the final connector. It is the part of the channel that exists on the visible side. When faith holds the inner connection and action meets the visible opening, the supply moves through completely. Action, in the certain way, is not desperate effort to force wealth through an exhausted channel. It is the movement of a person who trusts the source and walks through whatever door the source has placed directly in front of them today. Not the door they wish were in front of them, the door that is actually there. Invisible supply becomes fully visible at the intersection of inner trust and outward movement. Something becomes visible through movement, not through calculation. The channel does not fully appear to a person who is standing still and demanding proof before moving. It appears to a person who begins to move in the direction of their clearly held desire and finds, as they move, that the path is forming beneath their feet, step by step. Wattles describes this as acting in the certain way, moving with trust, clarity, and purpose, not knowing every turn in advance, but certain that the source knows the destination and has already begun arranging the route. Faith holds the connection while the channel forms. This is one of the most practically important sentences in this entire teaching. You cannot see the channel forming. You cannot watch the source arrange the connections, the timing, the people, the ideas, the openings. You cannot observe the invisible process. But faith maintains your connection to that process while it is happening. Faith is not wishful thinking. Faith is the inner posture that keeps you available to receive what the source is arranging. Without faith, you close, you contract, you stop seeing. And the channel that was forming closes because the receiver is no longer in position to meet it when it arrives. Wattles makes a distinction that is easy to miss but impossible to overstate. He separates the definite desire from the anxious plan. Both involve thinking about the future. Both involve the mind engaging with a financial outcome that does not yet exist. But they operate from completely different inner positions, and they produce completely different relationships with invisible supply. The command is clear. It is the definite statement of what you desire, not vague, not tentative, not a whispered hope that you are afraid to state fully because full stating would make the disappointment more painful if it does not arrive. The command is the held image, the financial condition you desire, the freedom it produces, the peace it creates, the life it enables. Wattles is insistent on this clarity. You must want clearly. You must be definite. Vague wanting is not a command. It is a complaint dressed in aspiration. The source responds to definite desire, not to generalized anxiety about wanting things to be better. The anxious plan is something entirely different. It begins as a reasonable attempt to organize thought, but it transforms very quickly into an attempt to control every variable of the route. The anxious plan does not trust the source to arrange the channel. It tries to build the channel itself from visible materials, using only information the mind already has. And when the plan encounters a variable it did not account for, when reality does not follow the script the anxious mind has written, the plan collapses and takes the faith with it. Anxiety is not planning. Anxious planning is the mind trying to do the source's work. It is the mind saying, I will design the route and then I will ask the source to deliver within my design. But the source does not operate within the designs of the fearful mind. It operates according to creative law, which frequently uses routes, channels, and sequences the anxious mind would never have chosen. When you lock your trust to one particular route, you are not holding your desire clearly. You are holding one specific method of delivery, and when that method fails, the desire collapses with it. The command says what is wanted. The anxious plan demands how it must arrive. The command is held calmly. The anxious plan is held tensely, with one eye always checking whether the route is still intact. The command trusts the source to determine the channel. The anxious plan trusts only the channel it can name and control. The Wattles way is to hold the command firmly and release the specific route entirely. or at least to hold the route loosely enough that when the source redirects through a different channel, the desire does not collapse because the plan changed. Definiteness is not the same as obsession. Wattles requires you to be definite about what you want. He does not require you to be obsessed with how it must arrive. Definiteness is the steady, clear, patient holding of the image. Obsession is the relentless, anxious, compulsive monitoring of whether the route is progressing on the schedule the fearful mind has assigned. Definiteness is peaceful. Obsession is exhausting. Definiteness connects you to source. Obsession disconnects you from it, because obsession produces the fear posture that closes the receiver. Wattles uses the phrase "the certain way," and the certainty he is describing is not certainty about the route. It is certainty about the source. You know what you want. You trust the intelligence that is arranging the delivery. You act through whatever visible door is in front of you today. You do not demand to review the entire plan before you take the first step. You take the first step with the certainty that the source knows the destination, and you allow the next step to be revealed through movement rather than through calculation. The plan can be useful. Practical planning, organizing action, making sensible use of the visible resources and opportunities available. This is not what Wattles opposes. What he opposes is the substitution of anxious human planning for trust in source intelligence. You plan the steps you can see. You act in the certain way through the visible doors available. You remain clear about your destination, but you release the demand to control every turn between here and there, because every turn that you try to control is one turn where you are doing the source's work instead of your own. The destination must remain steady, even as the route changes. This is one of the most challenging practical requirements in the entire teaching. When a channel closes, when a plan fails, when a route that seemed certain turns out to be unavailable, the temptation is to interpret the change of route as evidence that the destination cannot be reached. It is not that evidence, it is simply evidence that this particular route was not the one the source was using. The destination is intact. The source is still arranging the delivery. A new channel is forming. Your job is to keep the image of the destination clear and steady while releasing your grip on the particular route that has changed. The person who can hold the destination steady through the changing of routes is the person who has truly understood the separation between the command and the plan. The command is theirs. It is held in the mind with clarity and in the heart with faith. The plan belongs to the source. The source sees the whole terrain. The source knows which route, which channel, which sequence of openings will bring the supply most efficiently from the reservoir to the receiver. The receiver's work is not to map that route. The receiver's work is to hold the command clearly, act through the nearest open door, and remain available enough to recognize the channel when it appears. The plan may change. New channels may open where none were visible before. Old channels may revive in unexpected ways. The timing may not match the schedule the anxious mind has assigned. The shape of the delivery may not match the particular form the plan demanded. But if the command is held clearly and the trust is maintained, and the action continues through each visible door as it opens, the supply that was ordered from the source will arrive. Perhaps not by the route the plan designed, perhaps not in the exact form the plan specified, but it will arrive. The source is not embarrassed by your circumstances, and it does not forget what has been clearly desired. If this teaching is reaching something in you, if the distinction between the source and the channel, between the command and the anxious plan, is beginning to shift the way you understand your financial life, then I want to invite you to subscribe to the Master's Legacy. This channel exists because the old masters left teachings that most people in genuine financial struggle never encounter. Wattles, Allen, Shin, and others who understood the invisible laws of mind, wealth, and supply, they wrote for people who are ready to stop living entirely by visible evidence. Subscribe now, so that as we continue to unpack these teachings, none of them reach you too late. The law does not expire. The source does not close. And the understanding you are building right now, through this extended engagement with these principles, is not going to serve you only today. It is building a new inner architecture, a new way of seeing supply, a new relationship with the invisible mechanism behind every form of visible wealth. Stay with this channel. There is more here. And the person you are becoming as you receive these teachings is someone with an entirely different relationship to financial possibility. The mind is a magnificent instrument for a specific range of tasks. It can organize information from the past. It can analyze patterns from known experience. It can calculate probabilities based on recorded evidence. It can design plans using the materials already visible in the environment. For all of this, it is extraordinary. But there is an entire category of future reality that the mind genuinely cannot access. Not because the mind is weak, but because that category of reality does not yet exist in visible form, and the mind has no recorded data to process. The mind cannot calculate a person it has not met. This is a simple but devastating observation. Think of how many supply channels in your life have come through people you did not know before they appeared. Think of how many financial openings have arrived through relationships that did not exist until a specific moment created them. Your mind, before those people appeared, had no way to include them in a financial plan. They were invisible, not because they did not exist, but because they had not yet been arranged into your field of experience by the creative process of source. The mind cannot calculate a conversation that has not happened. There are conversations somewhere in your future, conversations with people whose names you do not know, about topics you have not yet thought to raise, in contexts you have not yet entered, that will change the shape of your financial life. These conversations are real, they are coming, but they are invisible to your mind right now. And since your mind cannot calculate them, your mind cannot include them in its projection of whether wealth is possible for you. It excludes the very evidence that would change its conclusion, because the evidence has not yet become visible. The mind cannot calculate a door that will only appear after movement. This is perhaps the most important limitation of the calculating mind. There are channels that do not become visible until the receiver has taken a step that the mind, before the step, would consider irrational. The step appears first. Then the channel opens. The mind, surveying the visible terrain before the step, sees no channel and concludes the step should not be taken. But the Wattles teaching says that movement in the certain way, action taken in the direction of the clearly held desire through the nearest available door, creates visibility. The step makes the next step visible in a way that standing still never could. The source sees the whole terrain. Your mind sees a cross-section. You are standing at one point in a landscape that extends far beyond your current line of sight. The source sees the entire landscape, including the channels that exist beyond your horizon, the connections that are being arranged beyond your awareness, the timing of openings that your mind cannot predict. When you ask your mind whether wealth is possible and your mind says no, your mind is reporting honestly from its cross-section. But the source is not cross-sectional. The source sees everything that your mind cannot, and that everything includes your supply. The infinite intelligence that Wattles describes is not working from your memory. It is not building channels using only the materials your past has provided. It has access to the entirety of creative possibility, to people you have not met, to ideas not yet formed, to timing not yet reached, to combinations of circumstances that your logical mind would never have assembled, and yet that will, when they arrive, feel inevitable in retrospect. This is why trust matters so deeply. Not because trust is a pleasant spiritual attitude, but because trust keeps you open to receiving from a source whose range of delivery is infinitely wider than your mind can calculate. Think about what happens when you order something of genuine importance. You decide what you want. You are clear about it. You place the order with confidence. And then something happens that is extraordinarily instructive. You stop trying to manage the process yourself. You do not enter the warehouse to arrange the packaging. You do not stand at the transportation hub and instruct every employee on how to load the vehicle. You do not attempt to redesign the route between the warehouse and your door. You do not call the driver every half hour to make sure they are moving efficiently. You place the order clearly. You trust the system. And you make yourself available at the address you have provided, so that when the delivery arrives, you are there to receive it. This is a description of your relationship with invisible supply. You are the one who places the order. The what is yours to decide and yours to hold clearly. You are the customer, not the logistics manager. You decide the destination. You decide what you need. You hold that clearly. And you allow the intelligence of the delivery system, which in this case is the formless source with access to every channel in the universe, to arrange the warehouse, the packaging, the transportation, the route, and the timing. This is not your work to do, it is the source's work. And the greatest thing you can do to cooperate with the delivery is to stay at your address, remain available, and stop attempting to micromanage a system vastly more capable than your individual mind. The panic does not speed the truck. This is worth staying with. Every moment of financial anxiety you experience, every sleepless calculation, every compulsive checking of visible channels, every fearful rehearsal of worst outcomes, none of it accelerates the arrival of supply. The truck is moving, the source is arranging, the channel is forming, and your panic does not add speed to the delivery. It does not reorganize the route more efficiently. It does not impress the source into moving faster. It simply exhausts you, narrows your perception, and keeps you in a state of inner contraction that actually makes it harder to recognize the delivery when it arrives at your door. Changing the address delays delivery. This is one of the most practically important elements of the analogy. When you change what you want every time the anxiety rises, when you shift from one desire to another because the first has not yet produced visible results, when you abandon the image you were holding because something in the visible world has frightened you into a different position, you are changing the delivery address. The source began arranging supply for a specific, clearly held desire. When you change the desire out of fear, the arrangement must begin again. Consistency of desire is not stubbornness. It is the condition that allows the delivery to complete. You do not manage the warehouse, and that is not a deficiency in your spiritual practice. It is a correct understanding of your role. The source manages the warehouse of invisible supply. It manages the inventory, the timing, the route, the personnel, the channels. All of these are beyond your visibility and beyond your management. Your role is to be a clear, available, trusting receiver. That is not a passive role. It is a role with specific demands: clarity, faith, gratitude, openness, and action at the point where the delivery arrives. But it does not include attempting to redesign the delivery system. Refusing the package because the driver looks unexpected ruins the process. The source does not guarantee that its delivery system will look the way you expect. The driver may not be the type of person you imagined would bring supply to your door. The vehicle may not be impressive. The packaging may be humble. The route through which the delivery arrives may be unfamiliar, odd, poorly timed by your standards, or wrapped in circumstances you find inconvenient. And yet inside that package is precisely what you ordered. When you refuse it because the presentation disappoints your expectations, you send supply back and create a new delay. The source is the ultimate delivery intelligence. It has access to every channel in the visible and invisible worlds. It can route supply through a conversation, a letter, an idea, a person, a business connection, an unexpected client, an old relationship revived, a new country, a new platform, a new skill, a new service, or a set of circumstances that combines in a way no human mind could have planned. It can deliver to you through routes that have never been used in your personal history. It can create new pipes from a reservoir that has never stopped flowing. You do not need to know the route. The source knows the route. You must be available at your address. This is the action requirement embedded in the analogy. Being available means staying in the posture of receiving. Clarity of desire maintained, faith posture held, attention open to the unexpected, and practical life arranged so that when the delivery arrives, you are capable of recognizing it and receiving it. A person collapsed entirely into fear is not available at their address. Their attention is somewhere inside the anxiety. The delivery can arrive, and they will not open the door because all of their energy is focused on the fear of non-delivery. The system is trustworthy. Not every specific channel is trustworthy. Not every visible pipe delivers consistently, but the source, the reservoir, the ultimate delivery intelligence is trustworthy. It has been delivering supply to trusting receivers since before any of the masters put the principle into words. The law was operating before Wattles named it. It will continue operating after every book about it is forgotten. It operates not because you believe in it with sufficient intensity, but because it is a law, and laws operate regardless of whether their subjects have studied them. The viewer's role in this system is beautiful in its simplicity and demanding in its consistency. Know what you want. Hold it clearly. Trust the source to arrange the channel. Act through the nearest visible door. Stay available. Receive with openness. Release the anxiety about the route. Stay at your address. And when the package arrives, open the door regardless of who is delivering it or what the packaging looks like. This is the entire practice. Everything else in this teaching is in service of these clear and specific acts. The delivery system we have described is functional. The reservoir is not empty. The source is arranging. The law is operating. So why in the lives of so many sincere and spiritually earnest people does supply feel perpetually delayed or absent? The answer, in most cases, is interference. Not because the source has stopped sending, because the receiver has placed something between themselves and the delivery. Understanding how interference works is not about creating shame. It is about identifying the specific behaviors that create obstruction so that they can be recognized and stopped. The most common form of interference is continuing to ask for supply while actively declaring that supply is absent. Someone genuinely desires more money. They are working with the teaching, they hold the image. And then in conversation, in prayer, in their private inner dialogue, they say the words that contradict everything they are trying to hold. They say nothing is happening. They say it is not working. They say I cannot see any change. They say I do not know where this money is going to come from. Each of these spoken declarations is an instruction sent from the inner state outward. And when the declaration contradicts the desire, the delivery is interrupted. Someone asks for more financial supply and then refuses the small visible opportunity that arrives. They were looking for a large delivery. What arrived was small. It required some work. It was not glamorous, it did not feel like wealth, and so they dismissed it. But the small opportunity was the first channel. It was the initial movement of supply from the reservoir toward the receiver. Refusing it did not make a larger delivery more likely. It sent a signal of unavailability, and the channel closed. The delivery system adjusted. The arrangement had to begin again. Someone asks for new clients and then does not answer a simple, unexpected inquiry because they have decided it is probably not serious. Someone asks for financial guidance and dismisses a clear internal idea because it seems too ordinary to be divine. Someone asks for an open door and then, when an unusual invitation arrives from an unfamiliar source, declines it because it does not fit the shape of the open door they were expecting. In each case, the interference is not malicious. It is simply the visible way addiction acting on a delivery system that source is trying to use. The receiver is blocking the channel by applying their own criteria for what the delivery should look like. Obsession with one specific channel creates interference by narrowing the receiving field to the point where only one type of delivery can be recognized. The person who has decided that supply must come through their current job refuses to prepare for any other kind of channel. The person who has decided supply must come through one specific relationship ignores every other potential connection. The person who has decided supply must arrive through one particular platform does not develop any other capability. And when the one channel they have decided to use is not producing supply, they experience the full emotional weight of visible channel worship. The conviction that supply has stopped because the one channel they were watching has not delivered. Panic during delay is a particularly destructive form of interference because it compounds itself. The delay is present. The panic response is activated. The panic narrows perception and closes the receiving posture. The narrowed perception makes it harder to see the unexpected channel that is forming. The missed channel extends the delay. The extended delay intensifies the panic. This is the cycle that keeps spiritually sincere people in financial anxiety for months or years, not because the source has stopped arranging, but because the interference of panic has become a self-sustaining system that continuously disrupts the receiving position. The second category of interference is what might be called premature conclusion. The receiver decides, before enough time has passed for the invisible arrangement to become visible, that the law is not working. They tried holding the image for a certain number of days and saw no evidence. They held the faith posture for a period and the bank account did not respond. They made the declaration and the job did not change. They conclude, this is not working for me. and they exit the position of trust. They collapse back into the visible channel calculation. And the arrangement that was genuinely forming in the invisible, which required a little more time to reach its visible expression, dissolves because the receiver has left the address. The third category is the split signal. The person desires one thing consciously and fears another thing at the same depth or greater depth unconsciously. They want wealth. They also believe at a level deeper than their conscious spiritual practice that wealth is not really available to them, or that they do not deserve it, or that pursuing it is somehow spiritually questionable, or that it will create conflict in their relationships. These deeper beliefs do not simply disappear when a person begins a spiritual prosperity practice. They operate simultaneously, creating a divided signal. The source receives something like, "I want more," and also "I do not believe more is coming," and also "I may not deserve it." This split signal does not produce a clear channel. It produces confusion. When the interference is named, recognized, and addressed, the channel reopens. This is the teaching. Not that you have failed, not that you are uniquely excluded from the law's operation, but that something specific is creating interference, and that specific thing can be identified and removed. The law is still operating. The reservoir is still full. The source is still arranging. When you stop changing the address, stop refusing the humble delivery, stop speaking declarations of absence, stop obsessing over one channel, stop panicking during the delay, and stop believing that the law works for everyone except you, the delivery that was being arranged will find you available at last. Here is something that the deeply anxious person has not yet allowed themselves to fully receive. You were never meant to carry the entire route in your nervous system. The route between the reservoir and your current location, in terms of invisible supply, is not your responsibility to design, calculate, monitor, or maintain. You were given a different responsibility in this creative process. You were given the responsibility of being clear about your destination, holding that clarity with faith, and taking action through the visible doors available to you today. The route is the source's responsibility, and you were never equipped, never meant, and never required to carry it. Release is not laziness. This distinction is important because many sincere, hard-working people hear the teaching about releasing the how and immediately interpret it as permission to stop doing anything. That is not what Wattles means. Release is not inaction. Release is the refusal to do the source's work for it. You are still required to do your own work, to be clear, to act, to move, to engage, to walk through visible doors, to be available. What you are released from is the crushing, impossible, soul-exhausting work of trying to design and manage a delivery system that operates at the level of infinite intelligence. That work was never yours. Releasing it is not weakness. It is accuracy. The feeling that arrives when you genuinely release the how is one of the most beautiful and undervalued spiritual experiences available to a person in financial difficulty. It is not the feeling of giving up. It is the feeling of setting down a weight that was never yours to carry. It is a lightness, a quiet opening of the chest, a return of some portion of the peace that fear had been consuming. For a moment, you stop calculating. You stop monitoring. You stop rehearsing disaster. You stop asking the question that cannot be answered from visible evidence. And in that moment of release, you become more available to the source's arrangement than you have been in a very long time. Your peace returns when you stop tracking what only the source can arrange. This is not a spiritual luxury for people who have no real problems. This is a practical necessity for people who want to receive. A mind at peace is a mind available. A mind at peace has the perceptual width to notice the unexpected door, to hear the unusual idea, to recognize the person who has appeared as part of a channel, to receive the humble delivery without rejecting it because it is not impressive. A mind contracted by anxiety is perceptually narrow. It cannot receive what it cannot perceive, and it cannot perceive what the anxiety has filtered from its field. The freedom of not tracking the package allows you to be present. When you are not spending your mental energy monitoring an invisible process that you cannot see and cannot influence, you have energy available for the life that is happening right now. The conversation in front of you, the opportunity that presented itself today, the idea that arrived this morning and deserved more attention than you gave it, The person who mentioned something that sounded insignificant but is worth following. When you are free from the compulsive tracking of a route you cannot see, you become available to the movement that is actually happening in your visible life. And that movement is very often the nearest channel the source has arranged. The most radical thing you can do in the face of financial fear is to allow the source to do its work without demanding a progress report. The source is not withholding the update to punish you. It is arranging something in the invisible that your anxiety is not equipped to observe. Trust does not require information. Faith does not require visibility. The peace that comes from genuine release is not the peace of naivety. It is the peace of someone who has accurately identified their own role in the creative process and has stopped attempting to fill the roles they were never assigned. You do not have to know how it will come. That is not your part of this arrangement. Your part is the what, held clearly. Your part is the trust maintained through the delay. Your part is the action taken through the nearest visible door. Your part is the openness so that when the channel appears in an unfamiliar form, you are available to recognize and receive it. The how belongs to the source, and the source does not need your supervision. It has been arranging supply through invisible channels for longer than your current circumstances have existed. The teacher of the certain way was himself a man who spent years not knowing how, years of financial difficulty in which the visible channels were thin, and the invisible law was not yet fully understood. He did not arrive at the teaching because he had always been wealthy. He arrived at it because he had been poor long enough to know that visible effort alone was not the whole answer. And when he finally found the law, when he finally understood that the source was prior to the channel and that his work was clarity and trust and action rather than total control of the route, something changed. Not because he stopped working, but because he stopped interfering with the work of the source. The invitation in this teaching is not to become passive. It is to become precise. To do what is yours to do with great clarity and commitment, to release what is not yours to do with genuine trust, to stay at your address with openness and availability, and to allow the infinite delivery intelligence, the source that does not consult your past before creating your future, to arrange the route, select the channel, and bring the supply through whatever door it chooses, in whatever form it decides. At whatever timing is most aligned with the totality of the creative arrangement you cannot see. The certain way begins with clarity, not clarity about how supply will arrive, but clarity about what you desire. And this clarity must be genuine, specific, and held with the steady conviction of someone who understands they are placing a real order with a real delivery system. The vague request, the diffuse wanting, the spiritual mumbling of "I just need things to get better," these are not orders. They are complaints with a spiritual accent. The source responds to definition. The formless substance moves toward form when the image in the mind is clear enough to give it direction. Begin by defining the financial condition you desire, not in the abstract language of hoping for more, but in the specific terms of what more actually means in your life. What amount of monthly income would produce financial peace for you? What level of supply would end the compulsive checking of the account? What financial condition would allow you to fulfill the responsibilities you carry and still have room to breathe? These are not greedy questions. They are precise ones. And precision is not incompatible with spirituality. It is required by it, at least in the Wattles tradition. Define also the emotional state that accompanies the financial condition. When you think about having the supply you desire, what do you feel? Security, peace, freedom from calculation, the ability to be generous, the capacity to be fully present in your relationships without the constant undertow of financial anxiety. These emotional qualities are not secondary to the financial desire. They are the actual substance of what you want. The money is a channel for the emotional condition. Know both, hold both. The inner state you desire is as much a part of the clear image as the number. Define the purpose that the supply enables. What becomes possible when you are financially supplied? What do you contribute? What do you create? What do you give? What do you experience? What responsibilities do you fulfill more fully? Purpose is not required for supply to arrive, but it deepens and enriches the image you are holding, and gives the desire an orientation beyond mere acquisition. The person who knows why they want supply holds the image with a different quality of conviction than the person who simply wants to be less afraid. Both are legitimate, but the addition of purpose makes the image more vivid and the command more complete. Define who you become. This is the identity dimension of the desire, and it is one of the most important. When you are financially supplied, when the anxiety is gone and the freedom is present, who are you? How do you carry yourself? How do you relate to money, to work, to opportunity, to other people? What decisions do you make? What do you no longer avoid? The identity of the supplied person is not just a consequence of the wealth arriving. It is part of the image that calls the wealth into form. You must begin to know the supplied version of yourself before that version fully exists in visible form. Do not attach the desire to a single channel. This is the point where clarity of desire most commonly goes wrong. The viewer defines the financial condition they want, but then immediately attaches it to one specific delivery method. The raise at the current job, the specific client who has not yet said yes, the particular business idea that must be the one that works. When the desire is attached to a channel, it is no longer a clear command to the source. It is a demand about route. And the source, which may have arranged supply through a completely different channel, cannot deliver to a receiver who has declared that only one delivery method is acceptable. The language of your desire matters. Vague language produces unclear commands. Fearful language produces contracted receiving. Specific, expectant, trusting language produces a clear image that the source can move toward. They avoid the habitual speech of lack. I need something to change. I just want to stop struggling. I hope something works out. These are not commands. These are the expressions of a mind still organized around the fear of insufficiency. Replace them with language that defines the specific, real, positive condition you desire. Speak it as something you are in the process of receiving, not something you are desperately hoping might someday be possible. The what must be held consistently. A desire that shifts every time fear rises does not produce a consistent signal. You must be willing to hold the same clear image through the days when nothing visible is moving, through the moments when the visible evidence directly contradicts the desire, through the extended silences, when the invisible arrangement is taking place and producing no visible indication yet. Consistency of desire is one of the most demanding and most essential elements of the certain way. The image does not need to be held with tension. It needs to be held with trust. Return to it daily, speak it calmly, see it clearly. Allow it to be as real in your imagination as the visible circumstances that surround you. Write the desire. There is something about the act of writing the desired condition that transforms it from a private hope into a stated position. Write what you want in specific, positive, present terms. Write it as though you are recording a reality that is in the process of becoming fully visible. Not I will have, which places the arrival perpetually in a future that never quite becomes now, but something closer to I am receiving. I am supplied. I am in the process of moving into this condition. The written form anchors the image. It creates accountability to the desire. It makes it harder to quietly abandon the command when fear recommends a retreat. Do not be timid about the size of your desire. Wattles is clear that the source is not embarrassed by large desires any more than it is embarrassed by small ones. The reservoir does not require you to limit your request to what seems reasonable from your current visible position. You are not ordering from a limited supply. You are placing a desire into the formless substance, which can produce any form in any amount, through any channel, at any timing, by any route. The limitation is not at the level of the source. The limitation, if there is one, is at the level of your willingness to hold a clear and honest image of what you truly desire, without immediately collapsing it to the size of what your current visible channels seem capable of producing. Once the desire is clear and held, the next discipline of the certain way is one of the most counterintuitive things a person trained by visible evidence will ever be asked to do. Release the how, not because the how does not matter, but because demanding a specific how before the source has revealed one is an act of interference, not an act of wisdom. It substitutes your mind's limited knowledge of available channels for the source's infinite knowledge of every channel in existence. And your mind will always lose that comparison. The language of demanding the how sounds like this. I cannot see how this will happen. I do not know where it will come from. I cannot think of anyone who would pay me that. I do not understand how this situation could change. Every one of these sentences is true at the level of the visible calculating mind, and every one of them is an incomplete picture. They report accurately on what the mind can see. They fail to account for what the source is arranging beyond the visible horizon. Replace the language of demanded how with the language of trusted source. The source knows the channel. The way is forming. I do not need to know the route before I trust the one who does. The practice of releasing the how is not a one-time decision. It is a recurring discipline that must be renewed every time the anxious mind reasserts its demand for visible proof of the route. The mind will raise the how question repeatedly. Each time it does, the practice is to recognize the question. Name it honestly as a fear arising from visible limitation and redirect it back toward the trusted position. The source knows the channel. I do not need to see the entire route today. I walk through the nearest visible door and trust the source with the rest. Write the desire and then consciously cross out every forced method you have been insisting upon. If you have been telling yourself that supply can only come from this specific employer, cross that out. If you have been telling yourself it must come from this type of work, or this particular client, or this industry, or this platform, cross those out. Not to deny that these are possible channels, but to release the demand that they be the only channels. After crossing out the forced methods, write this or something better through the channel source chooses. This simple act is a declaration of openness. It removes the address restriction from the delivery. Practice calm in the absence of a visible route. This is perhaps the most difficult practice in the entire protocol, and it is also the most powerful. When you genuinely cannot see how the supply will arrive, and you choose in that moment to remain calm rather than panic, to remain trusting rather than despairing, to remain clear about the desire rather than abandoning it in fear, you are doing something profound. You are holding your position as a receiver while the source is arranging the channel. You are maintaining the inner posture that keeps you available while the delivery system is in motion. Most people cannot hold this calm for more than a few moments before the anxiety reasserts itself. Practice extending it. When you hear yourself asking how in the desperate mode, pause. Notice the quality of the question. Is it the curious, open, expectant question of someone who trusts the source and is watching with interest for how the channel will emerge? Or is it the anxious, contracting, fearful question of someone who needs to see the route before they can commit to the desire? These two versions of the same question produce entirely different inner states and entirely different capacities for receiving. Cultivate the first. Redirect the second. Say openly and with conviction, the source knows the channel. Say it when you do not know how the supply will come. Say it when the visible evidence argues against your desire. Say it when someone asks you what your plan is, and your plan is this: trust itself. The statement is not denial of difficulty. It is the affirmation of the law that operates beneath difficulty. The source knew the channel before you felt the need. The source is arranging the delivery before your mind can calculate the route. The source does not need your map in order to deliver your supply. Releasing the how does not mean releasing the desire. These two things must be clearly distinguished. You release the specific method. You release the demand for a particular route. You release the insistence that the delivery come through the channel your mind has decided is the only acceptable one. But you do not release the image of the supply itself. You do not relax the clarity of the desire out of vague trust. The desire is held firmly. The method is held loosely. The destination is kept clear. The route is surrendered to the source. This is the balance that Wattles is describing when he talks about the certain way. Practice receiving something unexpected each day as a small exercise in channel flexibility. When something arrives unexpectedly, even something small and unrelated to your financial desire, notice the arrival. Practice receiving it with openness and gratitude rather than dismissing it because it did not fit the form you expected. This small daily practice builds the receiving muscle. It trains the mind to stay open to unexpected delivery. It creates a new pattern of recognition that will eventually extend to the financial channels the source is arranging. The person who has learned to receive graciously from small, unexpected channels has built the inner posture required to receive from large, invisible ones. The release of the how is an ongoing practice, not a single proclamation. You will release it today and find the question returning tomorrow. You will surrender the root in a moment of clarity and find yourself renegotiating for control of it in a moment of fear. This is normal. This is the territory of genuine spiritual practice. The discipline is not to never feel the anxiety. It is to recognize the anxiety when it arrives, to refuse to let it assign the delivery method, and to return again to the trust that the source knows the channel. Each return strengthens the posture. Each act of release is an investment in the receiving capacity that grows more powerful with repetition. Expectation of surprise is not wishful thinking. It is active faith in its most practical form. The person who expects supply to arrive from an unexpected direction is not being naive. They are correctly aligning their inner posture with the nature of invisible supply, which rarely travels the most obvious road. When you expect supply only from predictable, familiar, visible channels, you are limiting your field of perception to channels your mind already knows. When you expand that expectation to include channels you cannot predict, you expand the field of perception through which the source can reach you. Begin the practice of noticing the unexpected, not with the desperate intensity of someone who needs a sign today or will lose their faith, but with the relaxed alertness of someone who trusts the delivery and is simply staying attentive. A person you forgot about thinks of you and makes contact. An old relationship revives itself through a completely ordinary moment. A delayed payment that you had given up on suddenly arrives. A conversation that seemed entirely casual contains a sentence that changes the direction of an entire endeavor. These are not coincidences. They are the visible expressions of invisible arrangement. The source was working before the visible moment arrived. Watch for unexpected ideas. Not every financial channel begins with an external event. Some begin with an internal one. A sudden clarity about something you could offer, something you could develop, something you already have that someone else needs and has not yet had the chance to request. Ideas that arrive without logical preparation, without a clear preceding cause in the visible world, are very often the beginning of a new channel forming. The source sends the idea first. Then, through the development and action applied to the idea, the channel forms. An idea dismissed because it seems too small or too ordinary will not become anything. An idea received with attention and followed with action may become a pipe of significant supply. The unexpected person is one of the source's most frequent delivery vehicles. The stranger who offers something relevant, the acquaintance who mentions something that opens a direction, the person in an unusual context who turns out to have exactly the connection or skill or need that creates a channel. The source does not only use people who are obviously wealthy or obviously positioned to help. It uses whoever is most available and most appropriate in the creative arrangement of your supply. Often this means the person who appears ordinary. Remain open to everyone. A small invitation that seems unrelated to your financial desire may be the beginning of a channel. The invitation to join a group, the suggestion to attend an event, the request to help with something modest, the proposal to learn something new. The visible way mind dismisses these because they do not look like supply. But supply often arrives through a chain of small events, each of which looked unrelated to wealth until the full picture became visible in retrospect. A small invitation accepted becomes a conversation becomes a connection becomes an opportunity becomes a channel. The source works in sequence, and the first event in the sequence rarely announces itself as the beginning of something financially significant. Expect a rejected path to reopen. You may have tried something before, and it did not work. You walked away from it with genuine evidence that it was not productive, but time changes conditions. What was blocked before may now be clear. What was premature before may now be timely. The source may redirect you towards something you previously abandoned, not because you were wrong to leave it, but because the conditions have changed and the channel that was not ready before is now ready. Do not permanently close any direction simply because a previous attempt did not produce the result you expected. The source sometimes circles back. Expect the humble beginning to become significant. Most of the significant financial channels in most people's lives began in ways that did not announce their significance. The first client who seemed too small to matter. The first piece of work that seemed too basic to build upon. The first step into a new direction that seemed too modest to lead anywhere meaningful. The beginning is rarely proportionate to the eventual channel. The source begins small and builds. The receiving mind must be willing to receive the small beginning without contempt for its size. Expect surprise not as a demand, but as a posture. The anxious demand for a sign is different from the open expectation of invisible supply in motion. A demand says, "Show me something now or I will stop trusting." An expectation says, "I know you are arranging, I am staying alert, I trust the timing, and I am ready to receive when the first sign arrives." The demand contracts. The expectation opens. The source cannot easily deliver to a contracted receiver. It delivers most readily to a person who has set aside the demand and settled into the calm, open, available posture of genuine faith. The certain way requires action. This is essential. The release of the how is not permission for stillness. It is permission to stop designing the entire route before taking the first step. The first step is yours to take. It is the step through the nearest visible door. And the nearest visible door may not look like the door you wanted. It may not look like the entrance to wealth. It may look like the entrance to a small, ordinary, practical next thing. Walk through it anyway. The first door that presents itself after you have clearly held the desire and trusted the source will often be humble. Wattles is consistent on this. You do not receive the entire channel in one dramatic opening. You receive the first step. A practical conversation to have. A modest skill to develop. A simple service to offer. A small task to complete faithfully. A relationship to attend to. An idea to begin developing. The nearest door is not the final destination. It is the first movement. And movement is what makes the next door visible. Do not reject a door because it does not look like wealth. The first door rarely does. If you apply the criterion that only doors that look like obvious wealth are worth walking through, you will spend your life standing in the hallway waiting for an entrance that will not open until you have walked through the ones that came before it. The source does not organize channels in order of impressiveness. It organizes them in order of creative logic, and its logic is not always available to the visible way mind. Walking through the nearest door is an act of spiritual declaration as much as it is a practical action. When you move through it, you are communicating to the source through action that you trust the arrangement. You are demonstrating that you are available. You are showing that you are willing to move without seeing the entire route, which is the precise quality of faith the certain way requires. The source responds to movement the way a delivery system responds to a confirmed address. The arrangement advances when the receiver is clearly in position. The nearest door may look like service rather than success. It may be an opportunity to help someone else, to contribute something, to offer a skill or a capacity for which no obvious financial reward is immediately attached. Walk through it. The spiritual law of giving and receiving that Wattles describes in the context of creative relation suggests that genuine generous action in the direction of your purpose creates movement in the invisible supply that anxious self-focused calculation never achieves. The door of service is often the door through which the largest channels eventually open. After the first door, another door becomes visible. It was not visible before the movement. It appeared because of the movement. This is how the path forms in the certain way, not as a fully illuminated road revealed before you commit to walking, but as a sequence of visible steps, each of which appears after the previous step has been taken in trust. You cannot see step 3 from step 1. You can only see step 2. Walk to step 2. From there, step 3 will become visible. This is walking through the nearest door repeatedly, which is also the definition of the certain way in practice. Every movement through a door that the fear mind said was too small or too unfamiliar is a victory over the visible way addiction. Every time you act in trust when the full route is not yet visible, you strengthen the inner architecture of receiving. Every small faithful action is also a structural change in the inner posture that determines what you can recognize and what you can receive. The person who has walked through 10 humble doors in trust is perceptually and spiritually more prepared to receive through a major channel than the person who has been standing still waiting for a door that looks worthy of their arrival. Walk today. Not tomorrow, when conditions improve. Not after the fear has fully subsided. Not when the entire route becomes clear. Walk today through the nearest door that is actually in front of you. It may be a call you have been avoiding, a message you have been hesitating to send, a skill you have been delaying developing, a conversation you have been afraid to initiate, a modest offering you have been embarrassed to make because it feels too small. The source placed that door in front of you. Walking through it is the action that opens everything that follows. There is a form of poverty that wears the face of wisdom, and it is perhaps the most seductive trap in the entire landscape of invisible supply. It is the safety trap, the place where a person stops, not because they have achieved what they desired, but because what they already have, however insufficient, feels safer than the risk of moving toward something more. The safety trap disguises loyalty to lack as prudence. It dresses the fear of movement in the language of responsibility, and it has held more sincere people in more unnecessary limitation than perhaps any other single mechanism. The safety trap looks like staying in the dead position, the job that pays just enough to create dependence but not enough to create freedom, the relationship with money that involves just enough to survive but never enough to breathe, the familiar structure that has stopped growing, stopped opening, stopped producing the kind of supply the person genuinely desires. They stay, not because they have chosen the position consciously, but because the known limitation feels safer than the unknown possibility. The devil you know, the visible channel you understand, the insufficient supply you can predict. It looks like refusing new opportunity because the new thing carries risk. An unusual invitation arrives. A different channel presents itself. A new direction opens that would require some adjustment, some learning, some willingness to release the familiar for the unfamiliar. And the safety-trapped mind evaluates this through the lens of what could go wrong. It catalogues the risks. It imagines the failure. It constructs the reasonable argument for why the current situation, however unsatisfying, is more certain than the new one, however promising. And it calls this analysis. Wattles would call it fear speaking in the voice of wisdom. It looks like hoarding from a posture of panic. The person with very little clings to every unit of it with a tightness that actually prevents the receiving posture from forming. They cannot give because giving feels like loss. They cannot invest because investment feels like exposure. They cannot risk the small amount they have on the development of anything new because losing what is already insufficient would be devastating. And so the little circulates within the closed system of the fearful mind, protected from loss, but also protected from multiplication, because multiplication requires movement, and the safety trap prohibits movement. It looks like rejecting collaboration and visibility. Someone needs to be seen in order for a channel to open, and they refuse the visibility because visibility feels risky. Someone needs to work with another person in order for a connection to form, and they refuse the collaboration because collaboration means depending on someone they cannot fully control. The safety trap shrinks the world to the size of what the fearful mind can personally manage and supply, which comes through the wide world the source inhabits, has no road into the shrunken world of the safety-first position. It looks like calling fear wisdom. This is the most sophisticated form of the trap, and it is worth revisiting in this context because it is so easy to miss in oneself. When someone asks why you have not pursued the new direction, the new channel, the unfamiliar door, the humble beginning, and the answer is because you have analyzed the situation carefully and determined it is not the right time. Examine that answer very carefully. Is it the conclusion of genuine discernment, or is it the conclusion of fear that has learned to sound like discernment? The two can be extraordinarily difficult to distinguish, but the inner quality of the decision tells the truth. Genuine discernment is calm. Fear in the voice of wisdom is tense, tight, and unwilling to tolerate any uncertainty at all. It looks like the infinite deferral of action until conditions are perfect, when the economy improves, when the children are older, when the debt is lower, when the relationship is more stable. when there is a little more certainty about the direction. These are the sentences of the safety trap's most chronic form. The conditions the safety trap requires for action never fully arrive, because the safety-seeking mind will always find one more condition to satisfy before it is willing to move. Perfect conditions are not required for faithful action. The nearest door does not need to be perfect before it is worth walking through. The exit from the false safety trap is not recklessness. It is not the abandonment of all discernment in favor of impulsive action. It is the simple, faithful willingness to acknowledge that what you are protecting, the insufficient supply you have chosen to keep safe rather than risk, is not actually keeping you safe. It is keeping you still, and the source cannot deliver through a still receiver. Movement, even small faithful movement toward the nearest door, is the exit. Not dramatic, not sudden, but genuine. And every step out of the false safety trap is a step into the field where invisible supply can actually find you. We arrive now at the resolution of what was opened in the first open loop. The visible way addiction, in its most concrete and consequential form, is the pattern of rejecting delivery from the source because the packaging does not match expectations. This is not a failure of desire. The person desires supply genuinely. It is not a failure of prayer or declaration. The person has held the image, spoken the faith, released the how, or at least attempted to. The failure, if that word is accurate, is at the point of reception. Supply arrives and is refused because it does not look like what was ordered. A small client arrives and is dismissed because the fee is insufficient. But the small client was the beginning of a channel, the relationship they represented, the referral they might have made, the portfolio piece they would have provided, the skill they would have required, and thus developed in the provider. All of this was inside the humble delivery. The dismissal sent the package back. The channel closed. The source arranged a different channel, but the next one also began small, and it was also dismissed. And the pattern continued while the person wondered why the law was not working. A stranger makes an unexpected connection and offers something that seems irrelevant, not money, not a job, not an obvious opportunity, just a conversation, a suggestion, an invitation. The visible way mind dismisses the stranger because the stranger does not fit the profile of the helper the mind had imagined. A connected person would have been received. A wealthy person would have been received. A person with obvious credentials would have been received. But this person, ordinary and unassuming with nothing impressive visible, was the channel the source had arranged. The dismissal was quiet and almost automatic, and the delivery was refused. A low-paying first step arrives in a direction that would eventually lead to significant supply. But it requires patience. It requires doing something before the result is financially satisfying. The visible way mind says, "This is not worth my time. I need something that pays what I deserve right now." And the low-paying first step, which was the nearest visible door to a channel that would have grown, is rejected. The channel does not grow because the first step was never taken. This is one of the most common and most painful forms of rejected delivery, because the person who could have grown through the humble beginning instead spends years waiting for a beginning that already looks like an arrival. An idea arrives that seems too simple. The mind was expecting a complex, impressive strategy, something that would clearly justify the size of the desire. But the idea is plain. It is available to almost anyone. It does not require resources the person does not have. It does not require credentials they were not given, and so they dismiss it. It cannot be the answer. The source would not send something this obvious as the solution to a situation this serious, but the source sends what works, not what impresses. The obvious idea that is faithfully acted upon produces more supply than the impressive idea that is admired and never followed. A message arrives that requires a response the person is afraid to give. A conversation is possible that would require the person to be honest about what they offer, what they desire, what they are capable of. The visibility required is uncomfortable. The potential rejection is frightening. And so the message goes unanswered. The conversation is avoided. The opportunity that was inside the required discomfort is never accessed because the discomfort itself was treated as a stop sign rather than a threshold. A modest invitation is declined. Someone reaches out about something small, and the person, measuring the invitation against the size of the supply they need, determines that it is not worth their attention. But the invitation was the first movement in a chain. The event it led to would have created a connection. The connection would have opened a door. The door would have carried supply. All of this was invisible from the position of the declined invitation. The package was at the door. The door was not opened because the packaging was uninspiring. A chance to learn something new is refused because learning takes time, and the urgency of the financial situation seems to demand immediate income. But the skill being offered for development would have become the channel through which significant supply eventually moved. The refusal to develop it meant the channel never formed, and the person who refused it continued to seek supply through the exhausted channels they already had, wondering why nothing new was opening. The pattern of rejected delivery can be broken. The first step is simply to recognize it. When you decline something, when you dismiss someone, when you pass on an opportunity because it does not match the form you expected, pause for one moment and ask the honest question. Am I refusing this because it genuinely conflicts with the direction I am holding, or am I refusing it because it does not look impressive enough to be from the source? The source is not interested in impressing your visible way mind. It is interested in getting the supply to your address through the most effective available channel, and that channel will often look underwhelming before it becomes undeniable. Fear is not only a feeling. Fear is a filter. When it is operating in the receiving system, it does not simply create discomfort. It reorganizes the perceptual field. It narrows the range of what the mind can see and recognize. It makes the familiar look safe and the unfamiliar look threatening. It makes the small door look too small. It makes the unexpected channel look suspicious. It makes the humble beginning look like an insult. And all of this filtering happens so quickly, so automatically, so far below the level of conscious decision, that most people never recognize fear as the source of the refusal. They experience it as judgment, as discernment, as clear thinking. Fear does not announce itself as fear. In the context of financial life and invisible supply, fear tends to announce itself as wisdom. I am being realistic. I am being responsible. I am not being naive. I am protecting what little I have. I am waiting until the situation is clearer. These are not lies exactly. They contain elements of legitimate thought, but they are expressions of a mind organized around the primary concern of avoiding loss, which is the defining characteristic of the fear state. And a mind organized around avoiding loss is not organized around receiving. These are two incompatible orientations. Fear makes the open door look too small. You look at the door that is actually available to you right now, the nearest visible door that the protocol describes, and it does not match the size of the supply you need. The mind, running through the fear filter, concludes that a door this small cannot carry the supply that is required. But doors are not the supply, they are the access point. The channel behind the door can carry far more than the door itself suggests. Walking through the small door is not a declaration that you deserve small supply. It is the movement that creates access to the channel behind it. Fear makes the unfamiliar channel look unsafe. The new direction, the unusual opportunity, the unexpected connection. All of these register differently in the fear-organized mind than they would in the trust-organized mind. In the fear-organized mind, unfamiliarity equals danger. The mind does not have a record of this channel, so it assigns it a risk rating of high and recommends avoidance. In the trust-organized mind, unfamiliarity equals the territory where new channels are discovered. The source is not restricted to familiar territory. Most of what is new in the life of a receiving person will first appear as unfamiliar. Fear's resistance to the unfamiliar is therefore a resistance to the very channels the source is most likely to use. Fear sends a contradictory signal to the entire receiving system. On one level, the person desires supply. On the deeper level where fear operates, the person is signaling caution, contraction, avoidance, and closure. The source receives the signal of the deeper level because the deeper level is where the actual inner state lives. You cannot overlay a positive declaration on a fearful inner state and expect the declaration to be the signal the source receives. The inner state speaks louder than the spoken word, And the inner state of fear, however well dressed in the language of responsibility, says, I am not ready to receive, I am not open, I am protecting what I have. And the supply, which requires an open receiver, waits. The correction is not to eliminate fear through willpower. That approach produces strain without result. The correction is to recognize fear when it arrives, to name it with honesty, and to make a deliberate choice about whether to allow it to assign the financial decisions. You can feel fear and still act. You can experience the contraction of anxiety and still choose the open posture. The practice is not fearlessness. The practice is faithful action in the presence of fear, which is a much more realistic and much more powerful discipline than the impossible demand to have no fear at all. When the fear signal arrives, and it will arrive, there is a specific practice that restores the receiving posture. This practice does not require elaborate ritual. It requires attention and a sequence of honest interior moves that interrupt the fear pattern before it makes a financial decision on your behalf. First, name the fear, not in the language of shame, but in the language of honest recognition. I'm afraid that this will not be enough. I'm afraid that I am missing something. I'm afraid that if I move, I will make things worse. I'm afraid that this channel is not real. Name it specifically. Fear that is named precisely has less unconscious authority than fear that operates without being identified. When you name it, you step slightly outside it. You become the observer rather than just the subject of the fear. Second, say clearly and with intention. This fear is not my source. This is not a denial of the fear's reality as a feeling. It is a refusal to allow the fear to function as financial authority. The fear has arrived. The fear has been named. But the fear does not determine supply. The fear does not know what channels the source has arranged. The fear is not equipped to evaluate invisible supply because fear, by its nature, only sees the visible evidence of what is not yet present. It is not a reliable financial advisor. It is not a spiritual authority. It is a feeling that has arrived in response to visible uncertainty. It does not govern the law. Third, ask the honest question, what channel am I refusing right now? This question is the bridge between fear recognition and practical correction. When the fear signal is active, there is almost always a channel being refused in the background. The unanswered message, the declined invitation, the dismissed idea, the small door that looks too humble, the unfamiliar opportunity that looks too risky. Name the refusal specifically. Bring it into visibility. Because a refusal that is named can be reconsidered. A refusal that is invisible continues to close channels without being examined. Fourth, take the nearest faithful step. Not the step that requires the fear to be fully gone before you take it. Not the step that requires visible certainty about the outcome. The nearest step that is available in this moment and is aligned with the desire you are holding. It may be small. It is supposed to be small. It is the first movement that tells the source you are available, you are trusting, and you are in motion. The step through the nearest door is an act of faith in the most concrete and practical form available. It is the correction converting insight into action. The 4 movements of the correction practice are simple enough to remember. Name the fear, separate it from the source, identify the channel being refused, and take the nearest faithful step. This is not a performance of spiritual confidence. It is a sincere interior process that interrupts the automatic decision-making of the fear-organized mind and replaces it with the deliberate, trusting, action-oriented posture of the certain way. It can be practiced in under a minute, and each time it is practiced, the pattern of rejected delivery weakens and the pattern of receiving strengthens. You are not a person trapped by what the visible world currently shows. This is not a positive affirmation offered as comfort. It is a spiritually accurate description of your actual situation in relation to invisible supply. The visible world shows one cross-section of a creative process that extends far beyond what that cross-section contains. You are a receiver connected to a source that is not limited to your current visible channels. That is not an aspirational statement. It is a statement of what the law describes about your relationship to the formless substance from which all supply emerges. The identity of poverty is built from a particular practice, the practice of reading the visible evidence as the final word on what is possible. When you define yourself by the paycheck, you become what the paycheck says you are. When you define yourself by the bank account, you inherit the bank account story about you. When you define yourself by the closed doors, the failed attempts, the slow channels, the absent clients, the disappointing income, you take on the identity that those visible facts have been constructing. And that identity then shapes every receiving decision you make, every channel you notice or miss, every door you open or refuse. A new financial identity is not a fabrication. It is a return to accuracy. The accurate statement about who you are in relation to supply is not, "I am a person whose income is stuck." It is, "I am a receiver connected to an infinite source that creates channels I have not yet seen." Both statements can be simultaneously true at their respective levels. The visible channels may currently be thin. The connection to source is not thin. The account may be low. The reservoir is not low. The identity that serves your receiving is the one that accurately represents your relationship to the source, not the one that merely reflects the current visible condition. Speak the new identity, not as a lie over the visible facts, but as the fuller truth alongside them. I am supplied by the source, not by appearances. I am not limited to the channels I can currently see. I act through visible doors while trusting invisible supply. I receive from the source through channels I have not yet met. These are not denials of difficulty. They are statements of the law that is operating beneath the difficulty, and the law does not pause for the difficulty. It continues operating whether you have named it or not. Naming it with your identity is how you align your inner position with the law's direction. The new financial identity holds two things simultaneously: honest acknowledgement of the current visible situation and unwavering clarity about the spiritual reality operating beneath it. This is not contradiction. This is the precise balance that mature spiritual prosperity teaching requires. You do not deny the visible. You do not worship the visible. You see it clearly. You continue in the certain way through its current limitations. And you identify yourself not as the prisoner of what is currently visible, but as the receiver of what the source is currently arranging. Who you are when you are supplied is not someone fundamentally different from who you are now. The supply does not create your worthiness. Your connection to source is already intact. The channel to you is already part of the arrangement. What changes when the identity shifts is not your fundamental being but your posture. From the contracted posture of a person who believes there is no way, to the open, trusting, available posture of a person who knows that the source does not need a visible way. That posture change is the inner shift that the entire teaching has been building toward. And it is available right now, before a single visible thing has changed. Everything this teaching has covered can be organized into a set of clear, memorable principles that you can carry with you beyond this video, that you can return to when fear rises, when a channel closes, when the calculating mind says there is no way, and you need the law stated again in simple terms. The channel is not the source. Whatever visible form carries money toward you, the paycheck, the client, the business, the platform, all of it is a pipe. Behind every pipe is a reservoir. The reservoir is not empty when the pipe is thin. The source is not limited when the channel is closed. No visible way does not mean no way. It means the mind has reached the limit of its calculation. The source is not limited by the mind's calculation. The absence of a visible root is not evidence of the absence of an invisible one. Faith begins where calculation ends. Define the what, release the how. Hold the desire clearly, specifically, and consistently. Remove the demanded root. Replace the language of desperate how with the trust of the source knows the channel. Remain open to delivery from unexpected directions. Expect surprise and walk through the nearest door. Stay in the posture of active, relaxed, open expectation. Act through the humble door in front of you today. Do not wait for the impressive door. The impressive channel often forms behind the humble first door. Movement creates visibility. Trust advances the arrangement. Every step of faithful action is an investment in the channel that is forming. Name the fear. Separate it from the source. Identify the channel being refused and take the nearest faithful step. This is the correction practice. Apply it every time the fear signal arrives and begins making financial decisions without your authorization. Fear is not financial authority. The source is. The source does not need your map. This is the summary of everything. You do not have to know the route. You do not have to calculate the how. You do not have to see the channel before you trust that it is forming. The source knows the destination. The source is arranging the delivery. Your work is clarity, faith, action, openness, and release. All of this together is the certain way. You can stop. Right now in this moment, you can stop the exhausting calculation. Not forever, not as a permanent renunciation of practical thought, but you can stop the anxious, repetitive, insomniac rehearsal of how the supply will come and when it will come, and whether the route is still viable and what you will do if it is not. You can stop because that calculation was never the mechanism of delivery. It was the mechanism of interference. And stopping it is not irresponsibility. Stopping it is the clearing of the receiving channel. The unknown is not empty. This is the most important correction to the fear-based reading of your current financial situation. When you cannot see the channel, when the route is invisible, when the visible evidence offers no clear path forward, the fearful mind reads this as emptiness. It concludes that the absence of visible supply means the absence of actual supply. But the invisible is not empty. The invisible is where the source works before proof appears. It is the territory of arrangement, of forming channels, of creative intelligence operating outside your current line of sight. The unknown is not the void. It is the active domain of the source. You have carried the anxiety of visible channel dependence for a long time. The weight of it is real. The exhaustion is real. The grief of watching familiar channels close and not knowing where the next one will come from is a genuine human experience, not a spiritual failing. What you have been doing, trying to force supply through visible channels, using only visible means, is the most natural response to financial fear. It is also the response that consistently prevents the invisible from being received. But the fact that you are here, that you have stayed with this teaching through its length and its demands, suggests that something in you is ready for a different response. Peace is available to you in the specific form that this teaching offers. Not the peace of having resolved every financial problem, not the peace of knowing exactly how the supply will arrive, but the peace of accurate understanding. The peace of knowing that the source is not limited to the channels you can see. The peace of understanding that your job is clear and specific and entirely doable. Hold the image, trust the source, act through the nearest door, stay available, release the route. That peace is not a luxury. It is the inner condition from which receiving becomes most fully possible. The source has not abandoned you. This is worth saying plainly. Whatever your visible financial situation looks like, the source from which all supply emerges has not closed toward you. The reservoir is not empty. The law has not made an exception in your case. The invisible supply that the Master described is not a privilege reserved for a spiritually elite few. It is available to any person who adopts the inner posture the law requires. You are not excluded. You were never excluded. You were operating from the wrong position, and now you know the position that the law requires. Return to it whenever you leave it. The transformation the Master pointed toward is not from poverty to wealth in one dramatic leap. It is from visible channel worship to source trust, from the constant calculation of how to the steady practice of faith and action. From the rejected delivery of unfamiliar packaging to the open receiving of supply through whatever channel the source has arranged. From the identity of a person for whom there is no way to the identity of a person who understands that the source does not need a visible way. This is the transformation, and it is available to you now, inside, as a shift in position. Before anything in the visible world has changed, here is the challenge. Here is, for 7 consecutive days, every single time the thought arrives that says there is no way, the thought that looks at the visible situation, runs the calculation, and returns the familiar conclusion that the path to supply does not exist, you will answer that thought with a single clear, steady sentence. The source does not need a visible way, not shouted, not performed, said quietly, with conviction, from the position of everything this teaching has built in you. That sentence is the law stated. It is the correction of the error. It is the refusal to allow visible limitation to sentence your financial future. Write down every unexpected sign, idea, person, or door that appears during these 7 days, not because you are hunting for signs with anxious intensity, but because the practice of noticing the unexpected retrains the perceptual field. It moves you from the posture of only recognizing familiar channels to the posture of recognizing the whole field through which Source delivers. A conversation that goes in an unexpected direction, an idea that arrives without obvious precedent, a connection that offers something surprising, a door that opens where you did not expect one. Write these down. They are evidence of invisible supply in motion. They are the first visible expressions of channels the Source was already arranging. During these 7 days, practice the 4 movements of the correction practice each time you feel the fear signal. Name the fear. Separate it from the source. Identify the channel you are being tempted to refuse. Take the nearest faithful step. These 7 days are not a performance of spiritual optimism. They are an experiment in applying the law consistently enough to observe its effects. You are not being asked to believe blindly. You are being asked to apply the principle for 7 days and then honestly assess what you notice in your inner experience and in your outer field of opportunity. At the end of the 7 days, something will have shifted. Perhaps not in the bank account yet, perhaps not in the visible channel yet, but in the inner architecture, in the relationship between the calculating mind and the trusting posture. In the frequency with which you catch yourself reading the visible world as the final word and redirect to the source as the final authority. In the number of doors you have walked through that fear would previously have caused you to refuse. These inner shifts are the preparation for the outer ones. The source delivers to a receiver who has changed their inner position. 7 days of faithful practice is enough to begin that change in a real and lasting way. When you have completed the 7-day challenge, I want to hear from you. Come back to this video and write in the comment section what you noticed, not the polished spiritual testimony. The honest report of a person who applied the law with sincerity and observed what happened in their perception, their decisions, their fear response, and their field of opportunity. Every person who comments with that report becomes part of a community of receivers who are choosing together to stop worshipping visible channels and start trusting the source behind them. Your comment may be the testimony that gives someone else the courage to begin. If you have found this teaching useful, share it with someone who is currently staring at a closed door and calling it proof that no supply exists. The person who is at the edge of financial despair and has concluded that the visible limitation is the final truth about their life, that person needs this teaching the way someone lost in the wrong territory needs an accurate map. Share it without commentary if you like. Simply send it. The law does not require introduction, it requires encounter. And the right person, encountering this teaching at the right moment, can have their financial life reoriented by the distinction between the channel and the source. The Master's legacy exists to preserve and transmit these teachings to people who are ready to receive them. Wattles wrote in an era very different from this one, but the law he was describing is not era-specific. The formless substance has not changed. The relationship between inner state and outer circumstance has not changed. The distinction between the channel and the source has not changed. The way invisible supply operates, through the faith posture, the clear desire, the action through the nearest door, the openness to unexpected delivery. None of this has changed. The packaging of financial fear changes with every generation. The law beneath it is constant. Subscribe if you have not already, and stay close to this channel. There is more of the Master's teaching to be transmitted. There are principles that apply to different aspects of the financial and spiritual life, drawn from Wattles and from the other Masters who understood the invisible laws of mind, wealth, and receiving. Each of them left a map. We are here to read those maps carefully and translate them for people who are in genuine need of the navigation they contain. Stay with us. The teaching continues. You began this video in the same place the teaching describes. You began by looking at your visible situation and feeling the weight of the conclusion that the calculating mind always arrives at when it has exhausted its visible options. There is no way. Those 3 words have been the source of enormous unnecessary suffering for enormous numbers of sincere people. They are true at the level of the visible world's current configuration, and they are completely incomplete at the level of the source. because the source does not organize its delivery system around what is currently visible. It operates in the invisible territory where channels form before they can be named, where supply moves before it can be seen, where the arrangement is made before the evidence appears. You began this video staring at a wall, but now you understand. The source does not need a wall to become a door. The wall you see is visible. The door is invisible and already forming. Your work is not to remove the wall. Your work is to hold your desire clearly, trust the source that sees beyond the wall, act through whatever small door is currently in front of you, and remain available, open and expecting in the way of a person who has placed a genuine order, with a genuine delivery intelligence, and knows that the package is coming, through a channel they may not yet be able to see, at a timing the source has already arranged. The source does not need a visible way, and neither any longer do you.